On today's show, Cavs preseason basketball is here. They lost, but there's some notable things about shooting and a little bit of rotation questions. So we'll talk about on today's episode.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
The music you heard on the way in is from our friends at Astor Radio. I am Chris Manning. That is Evan Dammarell. With thanks again to Jake Stevens for his work on production. Want to tell you, too, that today's episode is brought to you by Jase Medical. Empower yourself when you purchase a Jase case, providing you with a personal supply of 5 antibiotics that treat 50-plus infections. Get yours today at jasemedical.com. That's JASEmedical.com. All right, today's show is getting back into the rhythm. It is getting back into game coverage here at Locked On Cavs, and we're going to start, as we do every game. Feels like we never left. It's like putting on an old comfy pair of sweatpants or something. It's a big takeaway. Evan, what's your big takeaway from Cavs Hawks? A 108-107 Cavs loss, but it's the preseason, so who gives a swear word I can't say in this program about the actual result?
Kids, if you're listening to your parents, ask what the swear word may or may not be. But my main takeaway for this one would have to be that in terms of the new faces, whether it's Max Strus or George Niang or even Ty Jerome, who played through a lot of first half foul trouble in the second half, but like those guys combined for, doing the math right now, 9 of Cleveland's 48 3-point attempts. Again, it's a small sample size because Strus didn't play in the second half. Niang tapered off a little bit in the third quarter, but it's indicative at least that the Cavs are going to be a little bit more 3-point happy, and it does go hand in hand with what Kobe Altman said in the fact that the Cavs need to modernize their offensive approach a little bit and add more 3-pointers to their diet on offense. And it clearly showed at times tonight. Like the first play of the game was getting Max Strus a pretty look from 3-point range to open things up for Cleveland, and it just became clear to me, like, yeah, they're prioritizing the 3 a little bit more than they did last season.
Yeah, I think the offense was the takeaway. It's how it looked differently. There's a stat that we'll get to when we get to awards in segment 2 that to me explains a lot of that, but it looked different. If you just watched that and didn't look at a box score, didn't look at anything else besides just watching the game, and you were familiar with how it looked last year, if you'd watched this team last year, before even, I think, to some degree, and then you watch this looked like a different team. Evan, why do you have sunglasses on?
To give the listeners / viewers the guys that we didn't record 2 episodes in the same night. So this is a different look.
I think
I can read just fine. So
okay, I
can see your white shirt and your judgmental appearance. Don't worry.
I'm wearing the same exact thing because guess what? You got to get your work done, and guess what? You wear the same stuff sometimes. This is just
all right. The sunglasses are off. I see Chris is not a fan of sunglasses at night. Go ahead.
Indoors in your home, it's just tough. But the offense is the story, right? Like Max Strus is out here taking 3-pointers in the pocket that like the Cavs didn't have like any role players that they took last year, right? Like
no, that became when he took that shot and made it, and also the fact that like he was taking 3-pointers in general. I'm like, yeah, the Cavs didn't have this last season, and
no.
Obviously, like the shooting percentages, if you look at it from a box score perspective, you're like, oh my gosh, the newcomers and the regulars are just not hitting their shots at all for Cleveland. That's part and parcel of the preseason. You let these guys kind of find their legs a little bit, and that's like a small takeaway of mine. It's just like this is very much a preseason game where both teams are kind of playing their way back into shape a little bit. And yeah, but like to your point, the Cavs didn't have that kind of edge to them offensively last year.
What like stood out to me was 2 things. I think it's obviously the shooting. It's just the 3-point volume. It's the spacing. And then I think it's just how everything moved. I mean, they moved faster. It felt more intentional. Like they're getting like the sets are starting at like 19 seconds instead of 15 seconds. That's a big difference when you have 24 seconds to maximize a possession. And then obviously Evan Mobley is really at the center of this. They didn't do what we expected, which was start Damian Jones. They went with Karis LeVert. what that did was that put Mobley literally and figuratively at the center of things, and they ran a ton of sets through him. We'll talk about that a little bit more later, but this was, they gave him DHOs, things kind of flowed in and out around him in terms of pick and rolls, and it's based off of him. That is such a change, that is such a positive start, that is such a distinct saying, hey, like we're going to do something different. And yes, this is the ground floor, this is the baseline, but everything about this to me, Evan, really just like looked different coming off of all that. And the personnel matters, but the intentionality, I think, really stood out too.
I think intentionality is a good way to put it. Just how the Cavs were flowing within their offense, how they were getting their shots. And I did note my like small note takeaway that Mobley kind of fizzled, like just playing the five purely, but like the offense did flow through him quite a bit. Like there was actions in ways the Cavs were reading and reacting that he was very much involved within the offense, whether it was through pick and rolls, as you said, or DHOs, or just he had a presence even when he wasn't shooting the ball. But I am interested to see again how this evolution continues for Cleveland, because it can be hard to iron out some bad or more bad habits, or maybe just like what is reliable in being a pick and roll heavy offense and be kind of becoming one of a vanilla one note offense. Like, can the Cavs exercise their demons enough from last season to really fully embrace this new offensive flow? I hope so, because based on what we saw tonight, you're like, yeah, the vision is there. Let's just see them keep executing it against not just each other in training camp or in practices, but against other full-fledged opponents, and see kind of what the vision can be for JV Bickerstaff in this Cavs squad just heading into this season.
I think we have some other things to hit on later, but was anything in particular to you, and was any part of this particularly interesting? Was any part of this particularly surprising? Like was any part of this to you like the key over anything else that you think about the offense, and or if there's any one player that was particularly notable?
So my original MVP pick was before I won't spoil who it is, but before my MVP kind of put together a solid second half, my MVP pick was just George Niang, just from the aspect of, okay, yeah, he has three-pointer, sees three-pointer, will take and possibly make three-pointers. He was 2 of 4 from three-point range in this game, but like that was, I'm like, okay, I see the vision. Or like Strus, like that's just what popped to me. It's just like, okay, the Cavs went out and got, arguably for what they could afford and for price point and et cetera, like the best 3-point shooters on the market for them. And I'm curious to see how like flow within just the star players at the top, because these are 2 role players that you're integrating into your offense, but like they will unlock a lot of things. And like, that's just something that popped for me in the first half. And the second half, like there were some moments, but it was mostly just garbage time basketball until Sam Merrill decided to stop shooting so many shots. But other than that, like it was a pretty fun first half, and you know, like it gives you some like we talked about this leading up to this episode when we previewed this game. There's not going to be a ton of meat on the bone, but like there's a little bit for me to chew on. Maybe it's like a little bit of gristle, a little bit of meat as well, but there's something for me to ponder upon and say like, okay, what do they do against a very lanky and long Orlando team on Thursday? And do they kind of like fully lean into more things at work, or do they punt the football entirely and like say, okay, we're going to start Damian Jones at the 5 and Evan Mobley at the 4 and just see how that works?
Yeah, I liked just the that they leaned into that small part of it, because I think the Mobley at the 5 lineups are going to be such a key part of this year, and I think understanding that they weren't perfect is part of this process. This whole thing, this whole offensive evolution, whatever it is, it's going to be a process for months and months and games. Like that's just what the reality is. But I think that the start, as much as you can take away from a half of a preseason game, at least was encouraging, and not against a full like strength Atlanta team. You don't have Jared Allen, so like it's imperfect and not like film you necessarily totally need to rewatch if you're us. The team surely will, but it's a good baseline for what's to come, and looking forward to see how they follow it up on Thursday. All right, coming up, game awards of this your first time. It's going to be MVP, stat of the night, play of the night. Let's talk about that coming up next. Today's episode is brought to you by Jase Medical and the Jase case, aforementioned Jase Medical. The Jase case provides 5 life-saving antibiotics for emergency use. All it takes to get a Jase case is to fill out a simple online form and in some cases jump on a quick call with one of their board-certified physicians. You don't want to be caught unprepared. Everyone can be empowered to take care of themselves and their loved ones during times for the unexpected. They handle everything from online evaluations to licensed pharmacy medication delivery and ongoing consultation and care. It's simple. You go online, you fill out a form, and then you get a prescription life-saving medications right to your door. You're a customer, for instance, named Frank, who said, quote, easy as 1, 2, 3 and just in time. I received our package the same day I got a sinus infection. My doctor was out of town. No appointments for days. Thank goodness it arrived. End quote there. So get $20 off on these life-saving antibiotics from Jase Medical by using our code LOCKEDON at checkout at jasemedical.com. That's JASE Medical.com. Game Awards. Evan, MVP. Who is it for you?
It's Isaac Okoro. Like I said, originally it was George Yang just from a pure shooting aspect, but like Okoro had a quietly pretty nice game. I think it's pretty clear like he's not a for sure penned in, maybe written blood guy like for the 8-9 man rotation. He's one of those fringe dudes who could be maybe fighting for minutes through camp and preseason play, but like he put together a pretty nice game, and I believe it was midway in the third quarter, like he shot a 3-pointer that was with confidence. And I noted this with my MVP award, like he was 2 of 3 from 3-point range in this game tonight. And if you're Cleveland and if you're Isaac Okoro, the best way to be impactful on the floor offensively is obviously with your slashing. But like if your 3-point shot isn't abandoning you and it's somewhat semi-reliable in terms of just like accuracy and efficiency, depending on the limited opportunities you get, like, yeah, this is a good momentum builder for Okoro. I'm like, you know what? I'm like, yeah, he had a pretty solid game overall. Who's your pick?
I want to talk about Okoro in segment 3. Let's just do it now. I really liked his game. This isn't surprising. I am who I am, you know? Like, I'm just going to look at this and be like, yeah. But look, was fluid with the ball. I thought moved. It was a little more active once the ball got in his hands. Like, he actually moved. And it was nice to see him, Evan, not like just standing in the corner. Like he was above the break. And that was like, oh, he's being positioned differently for whatever reason. And that felt pretty notable. And he did his normal defensive stuff. He had a really nice and one on the break. Like, I think you come away from this just being like, okay, like there's some improvement that maybe happened here, and we'll see how it bears out. But like I would be feeling optimistic to some degree if I'd seen this, and that was like, okay, he just looked improved, at least based on where we left him last year.
Yeah, and I think you and I are on the same page as that. And to touch on what I said in the first segment, like the Cavs want to take things from the first half that were successful, or maybe this game overall, like ways they positioned Okoro that weren't conventional compared to last year, or quote unquote putting him in a box, as JB Bickerstaff would put it. Like these are ways that you can utilize Isaac Okoro to make him functional within the offense. Obviously, he's a role player in the grand scheme of things, but like at least make him functional and complement the fact that he is your best point of attack defender heading into this year. So he's not a liability on one end of the court, so he can continue to get the bonus that he provides you on the other end of the court.
My MVP is Evan Mobley. I understand he wasn't perfect, but I thought active defensive game. I thought he was pretty good in the things they try to use him as a hub. And I just like that he was very much just at the center of everything. I think he looked a little more comfortable once they brought Damian Jones on, but I think that makes sense. And I just think he kind of did everything you would have wanted him to do in what you asked. But stat. Evan, mine, 22 first half threes for the Cavs. Cleveland averaged 31.6 a game last year. They were just like, okay, we're going to shoot a bunch of threes. Bet. That, like, again, one game. It is one half that we're pulling this from the guys that are starters. This could be like an anomaly. That will happen. That things will, like, not really prove out to be true based on what we see in small samples. That's how that works. But 22 first half threes is such an intentional stylistic difference that it you have to look at it to me and think, okay, is this a sign of things to come here?
Yeah, and I'll just you teed me up a little bit here. My stat of the night is like 55.8% of Cleveland shot attempts were from 3-point range. I think Sam Merrill alone in the second half skewed this statistic a little bit, but
just letting them fly. Good for him.
Respect it. You know, if you want to crack a rotation, you got to make an impression somehow. But for reference, last year's average during the season, maybe regular season, I did some lazy basketball reference searching, but last year's average was 31.4% of what their attempts were coming from 3-point range. And as Chris said, it is preseason, so you can't you have to take this with a grain of salt. Like, you can't assume oh yeah, the Cavs are a 3-point heavy offense, but just seeing that touch of modernity again puts in perspective how important the additions of Strus and Yang were. But more so the fact that the Cavs really are practicing what they preach in terms of just finding more clean 3-point looks and kind of letting the motion within their offense and the off-ball screens and the third and fourth reads within their offensive play really kind of dictate the flow at times. It is refreshing to see the Cavs kind of run something that isn't so one note at times on offense.
So here's the final percentages from cleaning the glass.
It's
holy crap. It's just very funny to last year you'd go on so cleaning the glass, they have blue for lower ends of the percentiles and orange for the higher, and they get darker for how darker they deeper they are, lower they are. Last year the mid-range was a pretty easy thing, a pretty common thing, and this year it's just pretty dark blue in this. 33% of their shots at the rim, 52% of them from three. That the 3-point percentage would in the 92nd percentile. If you did it over the course of every team last year, the highest percentage of a team in the league last year was Golden State, taking 44.7% of their shots from three. The league average was 35.5. This is just again, this just looked different. It felt different, and that's not going to be the real number, but
no. But you said, the league average last year was 35.5.
Yeah, Cavs were a percentage, a full point and a half under that.
Yeah, they were a below average team in terms of 3-point shooting. I think Chris and I aren't trying to be fully cynical here, but it's also a product of playing bigger basketball like this, and obviously not having Larry Markkinen on the floor either. But I again am interested to see and fascinated to see when the pressure is on. Do the Cavs really lean into this new identity? Because if they do, it's going to make life so much easier for them on offense, and then they don't have to expend so much energy grinding out every single.
Yeah, it's again, you get the personnel. This is kind of what you do. You committed to some version of this, in a way that I think is interesting. We'll see. Again, they're not going to shoot that many threes every game. They're going to get some mid-rangers in there and things and more dunks, I would imagine. But this is something. All right, quickly, we will do play of the night. Mine's very simple. It's the first Max Strus 3. That is literally a 3-pointer that they barely ever had someone take last year, and it's the Steve Jones, who does the dunker spot with Nekias, does a great job. Obviously, he's oh, this is why Cleveland got Max Strus. It's yeah, they got him to just be there to stand above the break and let a 3 fly. Yep. And take the kind of shot no one did last year. That's my play. What's your?
He's a safety valve, Max Strus. But about 1 minute left in the first quarter, LeVert uses his handle and dribble moves to break down on Kongwu in isolation, and it kind of gave you shades of the old LeVert with a heavy touch of this game being shades of the LeVert of last season. And I'm interested to see what he is offensively. There's so much spacing around him, but. A quick honorable mention to Austin Carr manifesting Taylor Swift attending the Kelsey bobblehead night in March in 2024.
I also would say that I think Craig Porter's junior dunk probably should get some love and some consideration here.
That was a good late game play. There's something there with Craig Porter Jr. He needs some time to rough out the edges with Mike Garrity in the charge, but did say that the vision long term is for him to be a backup guard off the bench with the Cavs, and he could be that dude who plays really well in the G League this upcoming season, and then maybe has to do a few more things to prove he can get a long-term contract, but could be one of those back end role player rotation guys for Cleveland.
Yeah, I thought he was the most interesting of the two-way guys.
Really? I thought Bates was awesome in his 14 minutes.
Yeah, I just thought Porter did a little more two-way stuff. Bates just kind of did Amoni Bates bucket stuff. I just thought Porter Jr. was a little more
fair enough
overall. Yeah, but that also just be my bias towards what kind of players I like. It's very possible. All right, coming up next, miscellaneous thoughts. Let's talk a little bit about Evan Mobley. Let's talk about really most importantly, who played and who didn't in the first half? Does that tell us anything? Let's talk about that coming up next. All right, today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel, the official sportsbook of Locked On and the America's #1 sportsbook. FanDuel right now is allowing you to snap into the NFL season with this awesome offer. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. So if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is super easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. And remember, check out everything NBA at FanDuel as well as that season and the Cavs season gets closer. All right, let's look at who played in the first half. Evan, here are the guys who we saw play minutes in the first half. Again, Jared Allen obviously out with the ankle bruise, so just kind of assume, I would guess, he starts and get Damian Jones's minutes in this exercise. What?
It's a hot take.
Yeah. It's a good start.
Proceed.
Yeah. Should they start Isaiah Mobley, Tristan Thompson, my column? I did enjoy Tristan, just doing very Tristan Thompson-y thing. It's like, yes, this is just who this man is. All right, Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, Max Strus, Karis LeVert, Evan Mobley. There's your starting five. Then it's Isaac Okoro, Damian Jones, George Niang, and Ty Jerome. That left Dean Wade.
Not so fast, my friend.
Who did I forget?
Sharif Cooper got 2 minutes and 25 seconds because it appeared Darius Garland tweaked his ankle for a split second at the end of the second quarter.
Yeah. That doesn't count.
It doesn't count. He had... he had one block shot in the first half. Thank you very much, sir. So
yeah, okay, but that is a guy on a training camp contract.
He's going to do great things for the Charge this year.
As he did last year. He's a good player, just not at that level.
And then we'll get YouTube comments in January asking why the Cavs haven't called him up.
I'll be like, because he's small and can't defend the point of attack. There's the issue. All right, so there's the guys, the five starters. The other guys coming up. What did you make of who played? And really, I think Dean Wade, kind of the most obvious guy who didn't play based on who played the first half.
I think Dean Wade was, the more obvious one. I think maybe Tristan Thompson as well, just because of the Jared Allen injury. Maybe JB is just leaning on vets at times too. It's also preseason, so you really can't read too much into JB's thought process here. But more so the fact that maybe JB kept his rotations tight because Ty Jerome had 4 fouls in 5 minutes and 16 seconds. Sharif Cooper played briefly because Jerome had those 4 fouls rather, and Garland appeared to tweak something, and they're like, all right, we're done for the night, even though he appears to be fine, at least just based on what's coming out of Atlanta tonight. But just more interesting to me that after saying he plans on going 11 deep at some nights, Bickerstaff kept it to about 8 dudes, maybe 9 if you consider the 5 minutes Jerome played within the rotation, which is, I guess, an expansion of what Bickerstaff did or didn't do. But I don't know. I'm interested to see how much JB leans on some of the depth the Cavs do have at certain positions. But yeah, I am surprised Dean Wade didn't play, who looked pretty all right in the second half. And he could have had the game-winning shot for Cleveland as well, but it just didn't happen for the Cavs. So I don't know. I'm interested to see how the rotations evolve going forward, but 8, maybe 9 guys coming off the bench at least somewhat lines up with what JB's saying, that he's going to lean on depth because he's traditionally a 7-8 deep coach, period. So I don't know. We'll see how it evolves. But what were your thoughts on the first half minute distribution?
I think it's the guys that make sense. I think just
that's valid.
They put it, if again, to circle this back to what they did with the offense, what I think happened here and what you saw is saying, okay, we need to play certain guys to have us play a certain way. I think that's kind of the reality. It's okay, I think starting Karis LeVert is not really the move. I kind of just think he makes most sense coming off the bench on this team. That's kind of the one thing that doesn't totally vibe with me. I think I would have just started Damian Jones. But I get for a preseason game why you just want to put Mobley at the 5 and let him go and let it work. I just think the guys who actually played, Niang, Okoro for his specific niche role, Jerome is kind of eating the Rubio minutes as Rubio's still away from the team. Strus as the starter. Like, I think all of it just, like, it made sense for them to play the way we think they seemingly want to play. These are the guys that need to play. Like, that's the roster. This is the style of play you get when you play those guys. So I think it makes sense. I think what we could see during the year, Evan, is these 10, and then throw in Allen, and it's like, okay, do we play a team where we need to play a second center? Then Damian Jones gets minutes. Do we need another guard? Ty Jerome gets minutes. I think that's where we're headed here, and then maybe Dean Wade gets, like, Dean Wade feels like he ends up in like the Lamar Stevens slot from last year, where he plays some when injuries happen, but is not a regular rotation piece.
And maybe that goes hand in hand with like JB saying that when it came to playing 11 deep, like there's going to be situations where guys are just playing so well that you don't want to take them off the floor or out of the rotation. And maybe Dean Wade, like you said, does fall into that role where there are injuries ahead of Dean Wade, so he naturally gets more minutes within the rotation. But more than that, if he's just having like a hot shooting streak, like he didn't have the shooting shirt on tonight that he wore all of last season after the shoulder injury, and I noticed during practice the other day that he was making more 3-pointers than he was missing, just with the standstill drills he was doing with the assistant coaches. But if Dean Wade is able to tap into a little bit of that confidence and swagger that just vanished after that shoulder injury last year, like he could be, I don't want to say an X factor, let's call him like a Z factor in terms of like XYZ, like that he could be a guy that if you threw 5-6 minutes his way, he's one, not going to be overwhelmed by the moment, but two, if he's able to provide you something positive on offense and be a neutral factor on defense, like, yeah, you give him more minutes, like you seed minutes from maybe Isaac Okoro, or like in this scenario, just Wade becomes your 11th man on this night, or you find ways to like tinker with the lineups and work with it. But I agree with your thought process is that you find minutes to work the 11th man, but like the 1 through 10, it seems to make sense when Allen is back in the fold, because I mean, the guys we discussed a little bit, like it's Mitchell, Garland, Mobley, Strus, we'll assume Allen there as well. Then you have LeVert, Niang, Okoro, Jerome, and Jones coming off the bench. Like, yeah, that makes sense for a 10-man rotation, with the 11th guy being like a bit of like, okay, what do we need this night? So that makes sense to me.
Yeah, and I think we will see where, if and when he comes back, what happens with Rubio. I mean, how he slots in and what do they do with him will play a part in this as well. I think that's a veteran guy that the coaching staff will have an inclination to trust based on what I think we know about JB. So you'll see. This is going to be fun to monitor. This team, like first glance, Evan, I look at the 11 and 12 if you include Rubio, and I think compared to last year, just on paper and just thinking about it a little bit as like a unit, it makes more sense to me than the depth that was there last year.
Yeah, I wouldn't say the Cavs have an overabundance of depth at every position with the 4. The depth at the 4 spot can be a little unsettling, but like depending on what the Cavs need at the spot, they can make do with what they have. But I mean, comparatively to last year, yeah, they're in a much better spot. That's just adding George Niang and Max Strus to the fold in this one. But yeah, they're in a much better spot comparatively to where they were at the start of last season, or even the end of last season. And I would never say this roster is complete just because that's how the NBA works. But at least heading into this year, they're in a much better place than they were comparatively to the start of last season, or even how things fizzled out against New York.
Let's end there. I'm Chris Manning. That is Evan Dammarell. Thanks again to Jake Stevens for his work on production. We'll be back at you on Thursday. Evan Mobley season preview. Going to be a fun one. New format for those season previews.
As an aside, this is before Darvin Ham said Anthony Davis needs to take 6 3-pointers a game, so we did not bring this up in conversation.
Might not have anyway.
Hey, you know what? C'est la vie.
If Anthony Davis averages 6 3-pointers a game this year, I will take you to dinner. And if he doesn't, you don't have to do anything. But if he actually does it, I will take you to dinner.
You still owe me dinner for my bachelor party, so I'll just cash in the 2 meals, I guess.
Nah, you can't do 2. This is not a 2-for-1. But you can spread them out.
No, not gluttonous here, but yeah, let's get rolling out of here. Thanks, everyone. See you Friday morning after the Cavs play the Magic.
Yeah, talk to you. Well, no, they're going to hear us Thursday, Evan Mobley preview, and then we'll be back Friday after the Magic game. I'll talk to you all